Imagine a world without choices. Imagine you can't make your own decision. That wouldn't be a world for me. That wouldn't be a world for you. UIC. Tell them we're gonna be stronger. Together, together we can make it right. Our purpose is a better Jamaica for you and I. Gonna be stronger together. Time we.
Good evening, and welcome to another edition of UIC Liberty TV. This is Joseph Patterson, and tonight we're going to be talking about the revolution, the UIC revolution. And we have a very interesting guest that's going to join us tonight, actually a journalist. And we're going to switch the tables a little bit. I'm going to be in the hot seat, and he's going to be asking me questions on your behalf. I'm sure there are many Jamaicans out there who have a ton of questions in your minds about the UIC, things you want to kind of drill down into and get a better understanding of. And so tonight we have a young man who is going to deputize for you and use the opportunity to drill into the UIC and into my background, the mission of the movement, the direction, the policies, why we think we can be the first third party in Jamaica's history to break through and actually represent the people of Jamaica, contrary to the two colonial parties. So good night and welcome to you all. I see some of our regular members jumping on right away. JMH, Carol Spence, Sonia Kildare, Leo Lord, Niga Stoney, and AV. Good to see all of you on tonight. We're going to jump right into it, not going to waste any time. I'm going to bring on Mr. Jerome Jackson. Welcome, Mr. Jackson. How are you doing, sir?
I am doing well, thank you very much. For just a minute, there was a bit of a brief disconnection, it seems. Good evening, everyone. I trust everyone is hearing me clearly. All right.
Yes, I can hear you very clearly.
Awesome. Good evening to your listeners, your viewers across the world. Let me quickly introduce again. My name is Jerome Jackson, and as stated before, I'm here in the capacity to ask the questions and gather some answers from the UIC through their president, Mr. Joseph Patterson. Again, thank you, Mr. Patterson, for inviting me, and for the UIC for inviting me to come and share and ask. Ask and receive. All right.
Absolutely. And just to be clear to our viewers, we have not pre-done the questions, so I have no idea.
Oh, definitely.
So I don't know what you're going to ask, and
yes,
I have no way of preparing. There is no script. We're just going to do this like if you meet me on the street and you just push a mic in my face and say, "Mr. Patterson, A, B, C, E," and I have to answer. So that's how we're going to do it tonight.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. All right. I'm going to briefly just introduce myself, and I'm certain persons are probably questioning what are my credentials, what qualifies me to challenge the UIC and what they are presenting. Let me just be simple. I am a Jamaican. I am a well-thinking Jamaican who would have experienced the politics of Jamaica from the 80s until now. And outside of my occupations, journalism being one of them, I am a human who is considerate of other human beings and the rights of other human beings. And that, for me, is what truly qualifies me to question the position of the UIC and what the UIC is presenting to the Jamaican people. All right. So just a bit of my background. I am from humble beginnings. I grew up in Augustown. All right. I still hail and recognize and vote for, and I'm a biggest fan of Jamaica College. I'm a Jamaica College past student. Um, in terms of representation of myself and as a professional, I would have served in a numerous industries. All right. For me, one of the biggest achievements is having served through the CSJP, the Citizen Security and Justice Program, an agency, a former agency of the Ministry of National Security. And some of my fondest memories are relates to the service I provided there. It was basically social work, social interventions, and it's quite interesting to see that we are where we are despite the different interventions that would have been prescribed, and whether or not the successes were what was anticipated or the failures were what was anticipated. But for the fact that we did some work in terms of trying to rescue ones who rescue ones from the social ills that we see still dominant in our society. All right. So for me, that was one of my greatest achievements, being able to sit and talk and reason towards a better life for youth, particularly. So again, that is basically the premise on which I stand in terms of my questioning of the UIC. I'm a youth, yes. I'm not a young youth, but I'm indeed a youth. And I represent not youth in terms of age, but youth in terms of stages, because many of us, despite our age, we are still youth, you know what I mean? So I represent those people who have something positive to give, same way in terms of their sweat. I represent those people who have something positive to give in terms of their mental ability, their intellect, right? I represent these people who are saying, listen, we have had so much of the regular, so much of the politics that has not really, resulted in the eradication of poverty and crime, but instead we have had increases, right? So I represent these people who are really about change, and by virtue of the fact that I have had the opportunity, the privilege of listening to the UIC's presentations, and also reading through the manifesto of the UIC, I am now at a place where I'm like, okay, so such and such has been stated. Let us now speak to some other questions that, we'd like to get some answers to. So, yeah, we want to get into it. I
All right.
trust that qualifies me enough for your viewers and for the UIC.
I mean, once you're Jamaican, you qualify to ask any questions of the UIC.
Same.
First and foremost, as a citizen. Of course, I understand that you have a journalistic background. Have you worked with any of the media houses in your lifetime?
I have. So I did serve with Nationwide News Network for a short time, about a year and a month or somewhere there, right? It was an experience that one of my most I fondly remember my time with the Nationwide team. Um, I understand to some degree the business of media,
Mm-hmm.
right? And that while media is a platform, it's also business. It's an industry,
Mm-hmm.
right? In an appreciation of media and news media, I, Jerome, I'm here to represent media in terms of not just for finding out what the facts are, which is what sells, but what the truth is, which
Mm-hmm.
most times is what many persons can't differentiate between the two. All right,
Mm-hmm.
because there is a difference between facts and truth, and most people can't really find that thin line. So we want to speak the truth.
Well, tonight we're going to find out the truth about the UIC, as well
That's it.
as some of the facts, and
That is
even challenge some of the facts and truth concerning Jamaica as a nation and our system of governance.
right.
Um, So let's get into the idea now, the idea, the ideology, the idea, the whole ethos of the UIC. What is your first question or comment on that for us?
All right. So freedom. Freedom is a word that is used on either sides of the political divide. And politicians have often preferred to the people that it's about freedom, right? Yet still, slavery is is the biggest business. And I would have heard the UIC speak to the control of the plantocracy, the PSOJ,
Mm-hmm.
over the governments, irrespective of the color, right?
Mm-hmm.
And that as a fact, um, as a result of this control that they have over either sides of the political divide, the people are exactly where we still are after how many years?
Mm-hmm.
Now, one of the first things I thought of was what is the UIC's vision of freedom for the
Mm-hmm.
people? It's articulated to some degree in the manifesto, but I'd like to ask and get a response. Tell me,
Sure.
Mr. Patterson, what is the UIC's vision of freedom, truly, true freedom for the Jamaican people?
Wonderful. For you to understand freedom, you need to understand slavery. Slavery is where one man or one woman is controlled by another man or another woman, or a group of men and women, or a government, or a system to extract the wealth of that person to benefit another person. So
Right.
anybody that's able to control you so that they can, by virtue of controlling you, extract your wealth from you and ascribe that to somebody else or to themselves, that is slavery. So freedom is when you are treated as a sovereign entity, having complete control over you. So first of all, your life, which is sacred. I mean, without life, nothing else matters, right? Your liberty, liberty meaning the freedom to choose what you think is best for you, provided you do not use force or fraud to infringe on somebody else's. And property, that is the right to own property, the right to create and own that creation, the right to work and earn and own what you have earned. Somebody else doesn't just have the power to tax it away or to take it away. If you remember, a slave now gets up in the morning and somebody tells him, go out there and work, and then they take all of the slave's wealth and probably give back a little bit to say, here's a hut you can live in. Here is the kind of food I am prescribing for you to eat. Here is the kind of clothes I am prescribing for you to wear. Here's the amount of time I'm going to allocate you for leisure, and you're at my beck and call. Slavery. Now, funny enough, today we think we're free, but if you look at where government is heading, more and more they've taken over our lives. They control our education, what we learn. We might think we're free, but they control our education. They train our teachers. They write or they decide on our curriculum. They may not write it, they may just import it, but they decide on our curriculum. They decide what foods will be allowed to be sold. So, for example, if a little lady up the street creates some drops and try to sell the drops, they'll say, no, you can't do that. You must go through a process that we prescribe. Even though the market may want to buy it from you, we will not allow you to sell it. So the market is what they define it to be. The market is not what we decide it to be. It's what they decide. So if they want us to have biscuits and crackers and canned foods of a certain type and don't want us to have other things, they just outlaw them and say you can't have it. So they manage your food, they manage your education, they manage your healthcare. They decide what is medicine. So if somebody else have an idea of any form of medicine, for example, our natural remedies that we have learned we used to learn over the years from Africa to now, they've wiped that out. So over time, we lose that knowledge because they say we don't want you to have that knowledge. We want you to ascribe to a Eurocentric ideal, and we want you to become dependent on medications manufactured outside of Jamaica for us. Or there's a pandemic and we want to force you to take this one injection. There's no other option. We will not listen to anything else. You must just do this. Or they might decide to censor you, decide what you can say or can't say. Right now, they're busy putting laws in place to regulate us online. So soon, you can't speak freely online anymore. If you see an accident happening and you take a picture of it and post it, that's illegal. You've now become a criminal. So they're going to make criminals of you because they say so. They will not allow us, the citizens, to freely decide what we want to consume. If I want to consume another man's image of an accident, that's my choice. It's not your job as government to say, I will prevent you or criminalize you from doing that. So all of those things, the last one I'll mention, take the plant called marijuana, given to us by God, by the Creator. It's a plant. And man decides they're going to make it illegal. So if a person were to grow that plant, they can come and burn it down and they can lock you up. If you try to sell a product that you have made from that plant, no, you can't do that. You must go and get $1 million license from them and get permission from them to do what? To make a living or to create a product. So the more you look at our society today, is the more you realize we're moving into slavery, a different form, a modern form, not the ones with chains and whips. The chains are now things like regulations, and the whips are like the government's ability to tax you any which way it wants. For example, property tax, which means you never own the land. You're paying a rent forever. Just a few examples. So we for freedom, it means giving you, the citizen, truly your sovereignty. You are now like a state. You, the person, you are a state within a state. So the government has the powers to do certain things, but never to violate your sacred space. You, the person, they can't violate, they can't take away your life, they can't take away your freedom, and they can't take away your property unless you decide to use force or fraud to take away somebody's life, somebody's liberty, or somebody's property. Then you no longer deserve the right to enjoy that freedom because you've decided to violate somebody else's freedom.
Appreciate that, Mr. Patterson, but would you not say that the current constitution facilitates all of what you just spoke of?
Absolutely not. Otherwise, you would not have had what we had in the pandemic crisis recently. You'd never have the government even attempting for a brief moment to suggest that they want to deny you your right, or then go through a back door and get the employer to try to deny you your right. As a matter of fact, you would never have that and have a government being able to say, round up all Rastas, dead or alive, like Buster Mankey did. So if the government can ever violate your right, like say, for example, you must come to them for permission in order to protest, then you're not free. If the government can decide that tomorrow, okay, we no longer want you to use sugar, we're going to pass a law and say you may not use sugar, then it means you're not living in a free society. Because whether or not you eat sugar is your decision. Whether or not you use a plastic bag is your decision. Now, if you litter, the government have a right to sanction you because you're violating the space of your fellow human beings. So violate the littering, don't take away the right of the man to use a product. In order to say you're trying to fix, okay, people throw plastic bags in gully or they litter. Of course, that is wrong, that is bad. Deal with that sin, deal with that crime and say, do not litter. And if we find you littering, we're going to make you pay. But don't come and say, oh, in order to stop the littering, I'm going to ban you from using this item, which is hypocrisy because you, same one as a politician, you're using it because you're in a different class. You know, you get to do all the stuff that you tell us not to do. Like you see the minister say, don't use your phone when you're driving, but he's driving and using his phone because he knows he's bigger than us. The UIC want to create a society where nobody's not bigger than nobody. You might have different roles and responsibilities, but you're not bigger than nobody. And the best way to have that is to protect the sovereignty of every individual, the Prime Minister's sovereignty and the pauper's sovereignty. Nobody will have the bigger sovereignty than nobody else.
We appreciate that also. Now, I deliberately asked about the thing regarding the Constitution. Now, I have a question here. Would you say that the current Constitution facilitates corruption? And if it's a yes, why and how so?
Sure. One of the key things in the Constitution that many people don't understand is that the Constitution of Jamaica is designed to corrupt the members of parliament and the senators and the prime ministers. You might hear the phrase power corrupts and absolute power corrupts absolutely. So let me give you a basic scenario of how corruption is ingrained in the Constitution. The prime minister has the power to decide who will be a member of parliament from both the House of Representatives and the Senate unilaterally. Yes, the Constitution says he consults with the Governor General, but you know, saying nothing that, right? The Prime Minister has the power to say, of all of my elected MPs, which of you am I going to give a position as a minister, which means more money for you, more status for you, and more access to corruption for you if I make you a minister in that department. So every single MP is beholden to the Prime Minister, wishing and hoping he's going to give them a powerful position. The Prime Minister also has the power to appoint 13 members, the majority of the Senate, unilaterally again, by himself. So those 13 senators are there because of him. So immediately they're beholden to him. Now, they also, all senators are hoping that he's going to appoint them to a ministerial position because the Prime Minister can appoint from the Senate and from the House. So you've just set up a dynamics there where your senators can't think freely and operate independently and think clearly and represent the interest of the Jamaican people. They're there at the behest of the Prime Minister, and they're now in their minds subservient to him, and especially because they want a ministerial position. The same thing for the MPs. They too are hoping for a ministerial position. And remember, the same way he can hire them into that position, he can unilaterally fire them from that position. So he has enormous power. That's corruption. The UIC in our model quickly fixes that. In our model, senators are elected. They're not appointed by the Prime Minister. They're elected by the people of their parishes. So you'd have 14 senators, one for each parish, to make sure in every law, every decision being made, the parish leadership gets to consider the impact on their parish before they lend their vote in support of that law. So you'll now have the law being carefully considered for its implication across the parishes and across the industries in those parishes. So you have balance there on the Senate side. On the MP side, we're going to make sure that you cannot appoint any MP to a ministerial portfolio. You cannot appoint any senator to a ministerial portfolio. The UIC model, for you to be appointed to a ministerial portfolio, you need to be somebody who's not elected in the House or in the Senate. You must be from outside, and you must be qualified to sit in that role. So for example, in our model, only a person qualified and competent to be a health minister would be in the Ministry of Health. Only a person qualified and competent to be transportation minister would be there. This now creates a unique situation. Your executive branch, because of our model, is going to be completely separate from your Senate and your House. So now they hold each other accountable because they're not subservient to anyone. The senators would not be subservient to the president. The House would not be subservient to the president. The House will represent their communities, constituencies, and fully so, and the Senate fully so. And the final piece is all elections would be based on 100% publicly funded campaign financing for each individual candidate. So the candidates now are no longer beholden to their parties, and they're not beholden, therefore, to the big money interest that would have backed them through their parties, because they now have independent public funding, not so much in cash, but in access to the things you need to campaign, which is radio, television, newspaper, internet, town hall meetings, and debates. All candidates would give given equal access to these. So if you're poor, you're not disadvantaged by your lack of means. And if you're rich, you're not advantaged by your access to capital.
That's a good one. That's a good one. That's a good sound, Mr. Patterson. And that formula, if only it was already employed by the other two parties.
Yeah.
But
and they
this is
won't
it.
do that. They won't do that, because if they were to do that, they're undermining the system of corruption that they want to maintain.
I was about to say to you now, in terms of a selection or the selection of these representatives across the 14 parishes. Now, we know that the current politics is awry. It is awash with nepotism, right?
Yes.
as many other structures are, right? Now, for clarity for the Jamaican people, how is it that the UIC intend to transparently select members to represent the peoples from each parish?
Excellent question. So there are two questions here really in one. One question is what the UIC does now in terms of how we exist under the current system. And the other question is what will the system look like when the people elect us and we transform it? I'm going to answer the second. So when the UIC is elected and we, with the help of the people, pass into law a new constitution that says this is how Jamaica will now operate. Here's how persons will get elected to any position, whether it is president, vice president, member of parliament, or we call them now community representative, or senators. How will they be elected? Very simple. The system will now be based on, first of all, every candidate must take a good governance course. The purpose of this good governance course is to ensure that all the candidates demonstrate that they understand what good governance is. It includes things like civics, so you understand how the governance model works, how it should work, what your role in it is. It would include things like math and communication to see if you have the basic computational skills and communication skills. There's no point being a representative of people if you cannot represent them effectively.
Right.
You'll be tested on being able to, analyze statistical information, because a lot of what government does includes looking at charts and trends and that kind of stuff. Also, world history, to see that you understand history, because if a man doesn't understand the past, he's doomed to repeat it. So you want to
Right.
make sure you have a command of the past, and particularly the past as it relates to Jamaica. Believe it or not, most Jamaicans are not au fait on the history of Jamaica, because even in school, it's not taught. What they teach
Right.
you in school is that Columbus came here in 1492. After a while, the Arawaks them dead off, then import some black people, we were slave, then we get freedom, and then yay, here we are, independence, and we're good. And it's very basic, very ineffective. The UIC wants to make sure our people, and when we change the education system, you're going to see that it's real history now. You're studying the players, the plays that they made, the relationship between the different parts of history, what influenced what were the drivers, what were the incentives, why did certain things happen, including what happened in the 1970s and 80s and 90s down to today. So you understand the link. Most young people right now who have left high school or even university do not understand what really happened in 1970, what happened in the 70s, what happened in the 80s, who did
Right.
what, when, where, and why, and what are the consequences of those things for today. They don't see the relationship. So we're going to make sure, to be a candidate, you must take a course, and it's open to all Jamaicans, by the way. It'll be a free course. You just go online, you take it, and you see if you understand and what your grade is. Once you have passed that course as a candidate, you will now go into your community and get what we call nominators. Persons who says, yes, I certify that this is a good guy, that I would give my vote. And for all intents and purposes, when you sign that off, you actually give them your vote. So you can't change your vote to somebody else. So that means it's a serious nomination. So you seriously want to nominate this person. So let's say you're running for MP. You need to get, say, 50 votes, 50 signatures in your community. So you go around and get your 50 signatures, and you say, wonderful. Very inexpensive, nothing much. And once you have that, you now qualify to run. And so you now get access to the same radio, television, newspaper, internet, town hall meetings, and debates. You are facilitated to participate in all of those. If you're a poor man and you need a suit of clothes to go to the interviews, we're going to give you a suit of clothes. We're going to assign somebody to you to do your makeup or whatever, just to make you presentable, whatever you need to just look proper for your stuff. So you're not going to be, oh, the guy, they're rich, look at him slick suit and him better than me. You can dress properly for your interview or for your debate or to do your video production. So everybody get to go to the same video studio where you get the same setup, lighting, everything is set for you to give your online presentation. So all the candidates are treated equally and fairly. And that now comes down to the voter now to decide based on the content, the quality, the presentation of the person, their policies, as opposed to the party games that they play with who have the most money and can push through their guys.
Okay. That sounds comprehensive to some degree. Yet still, we know that despite all of what you just shared with us, Mr. Patterson, there is probability that those, and it may not be an executive decision that may be nepotistic, but very much so you may find that, let me just put it this way. For example, Jerome Jackson says, okay, I want to represent this part of the island. And I have a colleague who I know is in that other part of the island. And we're going to do what we can to, even though he may not be someone who is in touch with the people, but because of the fact that he may be able to complete the very same course that you just spoke of, right? And he may be able to have a bit of influence, but he's not a people person. He doesn't understand the policy. He may not even be pro the policy, but he's probably the best person, say for instance, I see to do this. Influence may very well take precedence there, and based on the fact that person,
not really, right? Impossible. Our system is very different because you don't have any human factors deciding on your candidacy except the electors. So if you, Jerome Jackson, want to be a candidate, you first have to demonstrate by a blind test, because when you take the test, it's a blind test. It doesn't identify that Jerome is taking this particular test and it's his paper. So the whole setup of qualification is a system that separates you from anybody deciding to give Jerome a favor or to give Joseph a favor or whatever. So it's one of those blind tests, right? But you do have to demonstrate when you take that test that you have the competencies. And all we're looking for is competencies. We're not looking for so much right and wrong answers. It's competencies. How well were you able to analyze the information given? Because remember, politics is serious business. You don't want a person in parliament or in a council representing thousands of persons who really can't understand the information placed before him. He's being told to make a decision about whether to award some massive contracts to do some major development in the country. And he's going to depend on a friend telling him, yeah, man, go do it. He cannot for himself, analyze the information. So we're going to have that as a key. Beyond that, though, is him going into his community now and getting a few nominators. So if you as a candidate cannot walk around in your local community and get, say, if the requirements is 50, get 50% to sign off and say, I want Jerome to be on the ballot, right? If you can't get that, there's nothing else you can get, really. Now, let's say you get that. So now you have your qualification set because you've taken the program, the good governance program, and you've got your 50 or 25, whatever it is, electors. Now you're getting equal airtime as all the other candidates. No candidate gets more or less. You get the same airtime. If there's a debate, you're invited. There might be 6 of you going to the debate, 5 of you, it doesn't matter. You go to the debate and the citizens watch you. You go to the town hall meeting, it's organized, you're given transportation. If you have to stay over because of where you're coming from, whatever, it's provided. So you don't have to raise any campaign financing. You go to your debate, you go to your town hall, you participate, you go do your video presentation for your online feeds, whatever it is. And now the people get to decide. It's a very inexpensive system which shifts the focus from the what do you call it now, the theatrics to the substance of politics, the issues, your position, your platform. What are you really putting forward to the people? And then they vote freely and comfortably. By the way, one part that I didn't mention, at the end of all of the process I just described, there's a validation process where all that you have pronounced on the campaign trail is fact checked, and that is produced, put out there on your profile. Say, here are the stuff which you can contest before the election to say that's not true or that's true. But it's all fact checked, so the people know that when they're voting for Joseph Patterson, everything he says about himself, for example, if he says that he's a CPA, if he says that he has worked as chairman for the board of an international organization, if he says that his net worth is whatever millions of dollars, it's fact checked, and that is the case. That's the kind of electoral system the UIC want, where you can have confidence when you go to the ballot box to vote, and the people you're voting for have been properly vetted to be persons that can represent you.
Awesome. However, as I listen to your to that process, integrity, of course, is what we hope to achieve, is what the UIC hopes to validate and say, yes, that's what we are about. We are about integrity. And so just now, and the question I want to ask, while it is the output will show what it is that to validate what was said by the politician, and let's again use Jerome Jackson in this case. So I would have purported this, and there is one can go to whichever website and can read and say, yes, it is there. What about the things I have not said or shared?
Wonderful.
That qualifies for integrity.
That is the background check that we would have done. So again, the way the system is set up, when you put yourself forward for a candidate, what you put upfront about yourself and what you don't say about yourself, all of those things are fact checked and are a part of your portfolio online. So we're seeing where you worked, when you worked there, who your mother is, who your father is, what your net worth is. You know, all of that information is there for your constituents to see, not just your constituents, but others, for journalists to see, so journalists can ask questions about whatever. And so this system is really, for want of a better word, foolproof, because we're really giving the voters a very deep dive, transparent view into each of the candidates, their background, and also their statements and utterances, and what their policies are, proposed policies.
And should any of these candidates, again, let me use Jerome Jackson. Should Jerome Jackson, well, you said the fact check should have been done before. So before Jerome would have been considered for representation on the team of UIC, all of the necessaries would have been done, is what you're saying to me. So there, at no point, something should come up. And I said, oh, but that wasn't presented to us. We didn't know that. That wasn't presented to us, Jerome. Why is it that this is now coming up after you've been elected into service, right? So you're saying to me that based on the system that the UIC has, that cannot occur.
So let me be very clear again. We're talking about, there are two things. One is the UIC today versus the system of governance we're proposing for Jamaica entire. So what we're talking about is the system overall for Jamaica. The UIC today has a different system because we don't have the capacity as a small political movement to engineer all of that, you know, island-wide at the moment. So we're talking about when we set up the new government, right? The new system, the new constitution. So the constitution would stipulate all of that. So it's mandatory for everybody, whether the person is a GLP or a PNP or UIC or no C or no P. This system would be now the system applicable to every individual. So let's say a Rastaman in a Sentan want to run. He don't want to be a part of a UIC or the GLP or the PNP. He just want to run as a candidate. He would go through the same process I just described, because that's now the constitutional process. And he or she will go through that and will have no disadvantage. In this new model, when we create this new model, right, and put this in, the GLP and PNP would suddenly lose their advantage. Because their advantage right now is that they have the backing of the PSOJ oligarchy, right? So they will get automatically $300-400 million for the election. If you, Jerome, decide to run for office under the current system in the next election, you will have nothing. You will have to go and beg Jamaicans, like, please donate to my campaign. Very difficult for you to raise any money. But the guys who join themselves to PNP and GLP know that by joining themselves to this, they have some big money backers. Even if the persons are bad character, even if they mean Jamaica no good, just by being accepted into the PNP or the GLP, they know they automatically have a massive advantage over anybody else, both money and psychology. They have a massive advantage. When the UIC forms the government, replace the constitution, so now we have a new system of governance, then Jerome as an independent person, or Mr. Brown as an independent person, or Mary, who would have no connection with nobody and no special interest backing her or no PSOJ backing her, say she have as good a chance as anybody because the system is no longer rigged towards the GLP and PNP.
You're suggesting that as it is right now, the probabilities weigh in the favor of the two parties subject to the control. Now,
Absolutely.
this is my question, and this is the one that I sat and thought about for a while. The first time I sat and listened to you speak, Mr. Patterson, and you made mention of the plantocracy and the PSOJ, I laughed to myself. I'm like, no, how is it that the UIC intends to wrestle power from said plantocracy, said PSOJ, and give this back to the people? And that's, let me get a little bit into it before understanding the history, right? Understanding that the plantocracy goes before, precedes independence, right? Understanding that the Constitution as it is right now backs what is being done. The Constitution facilitates, and we just spoke to that, facilitates the current rights. Let me put it that way, and put right in quotation, rights that are right that our current politicians have. Right now, my question is, with the backing of these ones, how is it, and I dare say, how on earth is the UIC now? How does the UIC intend to wrestle this kind of power from them? Because this is not a regular thing, because we're looking at people who actually control economies, and bear in mind that Jamaica is a part of a global economy. Yes, bear in mind also that the ones or the forces that control the state and control the politics of the state are the ones that the UIC are actually opting to go up against. Not so much the orange and the green, but more so the ones who control the orange and the green. That's where the problem is really at. So my question is, how is it that the UIC, that, let me be very straightforward, no money, got challenge, go for challenge to say, listen, we represent all of these people who are poor people, let's put it simple and straightforward. And we are saying that we come for the power that is ours. It cannot be that simple. So how is that going to be done? You spoke to the changing constitution that would eventuate in a level playing field. Yes. But by virtue of the fact that the UIC must at this time, abide by the constitution, and as are the other parties, it already leaves the UIC at a great disadvantage. So my question is,
absolutely. The UIC is undoubtedly, this is a true David versus Goliath situation. It's a massive disadvantage to go up against the powers that be. And I take my inspiration from my favorite national hero. And I only see 5 national heroes. I don't know about the other 2 that they add on to the end. But Marcus Garvey demonstrated to us that against all the odds of any era, We have it within us to rise above the challenges. If you think about what Marcus Garvey achieved as an immigrant to America, an immigrant without citizenship status, he was able to build a massive black consciousness movement that created an international wave that the United States government had to dedicate an entire department to focus on bringing Marcus Garvey down, and he did phenomenally well. Now, if he did that at a time when there was no social media and where ignorance was greater, if you will, we too can do it. So we are pursuing a revolution here. This is a revolution, and I like to call it a ballot box revolution because it's a bloodless one. We're not going to kill anybody or do anything violent, except we push there because of the forces coming. But we are committed to leading a revolution that involves the man at the bottom, the grassroots. So our movement is built on the poor man, if you will. They like to call them the poor people, but we're not as poor as we think. If 100,000 Jamaicans were to contribute $250 a week to its own political party, to their own political movement, we would have overcome the PSOJ oligarchy with $100 million per month. Marcus Garvey understood this. He started the first crowdfunding the world has ever seen and was able to build multiple companies and the Black Star lineup. So I know we can do it. The only thing that remains is whether we believe we can. And what you believe, you achieve. If you don't believe you can achieve it, you won't. So I have dedicated the last 10 years of my life to building this movement with the hope that I'll be able to convince us to believe that we can do what Marcus Garvey did and do it even better now that we have learned from him. We have learned more about the society around us, about the enemy that we face. Can we rise to it? And I think we can. If just 1,000 Jamaicans overseas gave $25 a month, that is 25,000 US dollars per month for us to move this forward. And so far, about 200 persons have responded to the call. Over the period of time, about 600 to 800 persons have responded. To set up the UIC, 1,300 persons responded. And if we can just get the message out through all of us who have responded, we can continue to double and quadruple that and raise the kind of money necessary to meet the PSOJ oligarchy on the field and beat them at their own game.
I love this. I appreciate this strategy. One thing though, with Marcus Garvey, and indeed he's respected, and his respect can never be, you know what I mean, taken away. However, we saw where Marcus Garvey was. We saw the end result. Let me just get to the point. We saw the end result.
Mm-hmm.
And I heard you say just now that, of course, right now the UIC is not intending of starting a physical warfare, and that's not the revolution the UIC hopes to accomplish. However, the probability does exist that as peaceful as the UIC intends to win this war, probability exists that they may be meted out, or what may be meted out to them is violence. And this has been the record for all of the ones who have opted to speak off and act on as it relates to revolutionizing and changing. It never went without bloodshed.
Mm-hmm.
Never did. And so is it that members of the UIC, the core team, the family that is UIC, are UIC members ready to take on that kind of risk? Let me say something to you, Mr. Patterson. Some years ago, when I was a teenager, I wasn't a teenager, I was in my earlier 20s. Some colleagues and I formed what we called the Africa Hill Movement. And the whole point of this was to educate, was to, elevate the minds of the young people, especially, to see and understand that freedom has not yet been achieved. Independence has not yet been achieved.
Mhm.
We had begun to understand from that early age that, hey, there's something radically wrong with what we were told, and we had begun to unlearn. And so in the process, while I and my colleagues were, setting about starting up this movement called Africa Hill Movement, I remember a young man saying to me one day, him rest in peace now anyhow, and it's the same system that actually outed him. The young man said to me, he's older than I am. He said to me, what you are doing here, forget them to Marcus and Bob. His exact word to me. He said, you forget, where them to Mark, it I'm afraid to do to you too. Those were his exact words to me.
So, Sir Jackson, there are three things that you use to keep somebody a slave. The first thing is fear. And so if we are fearful of losing our lives, if we're fearful of losing our income, if we're fearful of losing our freedom, then we have lost already. So we can't be afford to be afraid. Now, being wise and being cautious and being careful doesn't mean you're being fearful. Being prepared and being equipped to respond doesn't mean you're being fearful. Fear is when you allow the fact that if you fight for your right, somebody is going to retaliate, stops you from fighting for your right. But when you stop fighting for your right, what are you doing? You're by extension giving up your right. You're saying, I have decided that it's better to live as a slave than to die as a free man. No, I'm not prepared to do that. So I'm prepared, like Samuel Sharp. He made it very clear. I'd rather die, he said, on yonder gallows than live in slavery. I, Joseph L. Patterson, would rather die than live in slavery. So you see what they're coming with now? The other day when they came with the COVID injection, and I went out there and led 500 other people and say no, and they captured me and mistreated me and jailed me because of that. I was prepared on that day to die to make sure that they don't believe they can simply come and take away this body that they didn't give to me. God gave me this body. God gave us our body. And so I am prepared to fight for this bodily autonomy and encourage my fellow Jamaicans to do the same. Now, I said there are three things they use to make you a slave. Fear. The second one they use to keep you a slave is ignorance. They want us to become ignorant of the reality. Marcus Garvey didn't fail. It's we who didn't continue. Marcus Garvey succeeded beyond measure. What he achieved was phenomenal. And of course, some of us sold him out, and then the rest of us left him out of our lives. We allowed two colonial parties to decide what we're going to learn about Marcus Garvey and how much of what he was teaching us we're going to continue. And what we did was to give up our right to think for ourselves, give up our right to fight for our right to be educated in the ways of Marcus Garvey and the freedom to which he and Nanny and Sam Sharp and Bogle aspired. And we gave that up. And we allowed 63, back then 60, crooked men and women who are whitewashed black men who decide that they're going to be led by the same people who enslaved us, raped us, and stole from us. They're going to allow them to write a constitution for us. And today, organizing to trick us one more time with a fake constitution again, and we the people must say no. Enough is enough. So I am prepared not to be fooled twice. My parents were, my grandparents were, my great-great-grandparents were, and I won't be. So I said three things. One, fear. Two, ignorance. The third thing they use to hold us down is financial weakness, poverty. They want to keep us poverty in the mind and poverty in the pocket. And so we feel as if we're too poor to rise up. And we just say, listen, just buy my vote. And me, I'm saying to the people, no matter how poor you are, you must can find $250 a week to fight for your freedom. You must can eke out $250 a party money and say, I'm going to put this aside. That's what they did in Marcus Garvey time. That's the spirit of the people. They were physically poor by virtue of the colonial masters' economic oppression, but they still bought their stocks in the Black Star Liner. They still invested in the corner store that was owned by a black man. They still invested in the voluntary activities of the UNIA. They still worked despite the oppression. They worked. And if we had not given up that hope, if we had not given up that struggle, today, Africa and Jamaica would be a powerful free nation on this planet.
Agreed. You know, when I was growing up, I recall my father sharing with me the story of Lee Kuan Yew and Singapore.
Mm-hmm.
And today, as we know, Singapore is first world, and yet still here we are.
Yes.
And of course, again, as we know, this is due to the control mechanisms that is greater than our government or administrations, either orange or green.
Don't leave Singapore yet. I want to point out something for our viewers on Singapore. Singapore became independent just 3 years after Jamaica, 1965. We got 62, they got 65. At that time, the same Cold War was happening between USSR and the West, right? Same Cold War. Singapore was poorer than Jamaica on every measure. They had one key advantage, was the strategic location of their country and the possibility of making it a port facility. Jamaica had the same strategic advantage on this side of the world in terms of our location. So both had strategic location that were important to the different axes, the different powers. Singapore had language barriers, language wars, because they had 4 or 5 different population groups which spoke different languages, so they were fighting each other over language. Jamaica didn't have that. We had the English language, which was accepted by all of us, and then we have patois that allow us to talk with each other comfortably. So we have that. So they didn't have that. They also don't have not even 1% of the natural resources that we have here in Jamaica. Their country is more like a rock, a piece of rock, literally, that they had to finesse to become something meaningful to live on. We have 15 times the land size. Singapore is the size of St. Thomas, right? And we have 15 St. Thomas here. So we're 15 times the size. Their population today is nearly a little over 6 million, which means a little bit more than twice what we have. Yet still, they have 98% home ownership rate. Sorry, 92% home ownership rate. Their people own where they live. They're living in a house that is comfortable for them and their family. Their per capita income per person is roughly 65,000 US dollars. Ours is between 7,000 and 9,000, depending on which year you go and check. Okay? Their murder rate with 6 million people, their murder rate is 0.25 per 100,000. Our murder rate is 46 per 100,000. Our brightest math student is their dumbest math student. You understand? Their education system brings out the absolute best in their people so that they do not have their people available to do the low-end work in their society. They have to import people to do the low-end work. Why am I saying all of this? Their leader used 25 years, one generation, to go from third world to first world. Our leaders had 18 years prior to independence to try out the bicycle, from 1944 when we got the right to vote until 1962. 18 solid years to figure it out and get it right. And then from 62 onwards, they get another 60 years, now going into 62, 63 years. In total, they have had 80 years with this country. And on every metric, Singapore has beaten us. On crime, our crime went up over the 80, or let's use the 60. Our crime went up over the 60, their crime went down over the 60. Our dollar went down over the 60, Their currency went up over the 60. Their standard of living went up over the 60. Our standard went down over the 60. Now the question is, why is that? Very simple. Two things: leadership and governance. And that's what the UIC is going to provide.
Leadership and governance, it is. But are the people ready? No, I asked that deliberately. I was having a bit of question and answer with a couple of ones earlier today, and I asked a particular gentleman and senior man, an elder man, what was his thoughts, or what were his thoughts as it relates to a third party and the vision that a vision that is similar to Marcus Garvey's. What are his thoughts? And just the way where he was at, if he was mentally prepared for that kind of shift. And bear in mind, what we're talking about here and what the UIC is proposing is something of a paradigm shift, right? And that's a mental plane we're talking about here, not per se just a physical, a mental plane in terms of that shift. And when the gentleman responded to me, I said, what would convince you to invest your trust, your faith, your hope in a third party? And you would in me kind of paraphrasing, you would have said to me, actions speaks louder than words. This is what he would have said to me. So if they are coming to do stuff, let us begin to see them do stuff from now. You know what I mean? Because we don't want them to be coming and saying that they're going to do this and going to do that. We're familiar with manifestos. We've seen many of them. We want to see action on the ground. Now, you just said to me that the strategy, the mode of the UIC is basically post a win at the elections would alter, make changes, revise the constitution to reflect.
Replace.
Yeah, I like how you correct me. Replace, because we're talking about complete reformation, correct?
Yes, complete. We're not going to try to build on what the colonial masters gave us. We're going to replace what they've used to destroy us.
Awesome. So, do you think, is the UIC convinced that the Jamaican people, who so many are still die-hearted this and die-hearted that, some who would have tried the NDM and would have said, okay, clearly that is not going to work. Those who can be bought and sold subject to the reality of poverty on the island. Those who just want, based on how we've been cultured, so many of us have been cultured for the quick fix, right? They don't want to wait to see, they don't want a 25-year or next generation to see the changes that UIC is presenting. I'm not saying 25 years, I'm just for
like Singapore, yeah. But hold on. There's a really easy answer to this, if a person is wise enough to understand it. Yeah? Let's look at it. We have before us today 3 options. The first option is that we vote for one of the 2 colonial parties that have led us for the last 80 years and hope and pray and wish that after doing that, we're going to get something different from what they have given us for the last 80 years. Now, anybody who understands probability knows that the probability of them giving you something different from what they have given you for the last 80 years is very low. So that's option number 1. Option number 2 is that you do what an alarmingly large number of Jamaicans have begun to do, which is to divorce themselves from the political process. In the last 3 elections, we've gone from 48% didn't vote to 52% didn't vote to now 63% didn't vote. So we're being sorry?
I'm saying, as I had seen the polls.
Yes.
I had seen
so we're now being led by a minority government, meaning only a small number of Jamaicans have voted for them, 37% to be exact. And the
Right.
existing government itself, the body that calls itself the government, made up of the Jamaica Labour Party representatives, they only received 21% of the entire voting population. So the government we have today is a 21% government. The prime minister is a 21% prime minister. The people of Jamaica are suffering at the hands of a group that does not enjoy the support of more than 21% of the Jamaican population in terms of the polls that really count, which is the polls where people vote. Now, I told you there are three options. Option
Mhm.
number one, you vote for one of the two that you have voted for, that we have voted for the last 80 years, and hope for some kind of difference. That's number one. I consider that very, very foolish. Number two, I have more sympathy for number two because if you don't have nothing to vote for, it's best you don't vote. So you don't, there's the two of them don't offer you anything. So don't vote. Now that's where I fell. I have never voted for either of them, but I wanted to give myself a chance to vote for something. And that's why I created the UIC, because I couldn't continue to sit on the sidelines knowing, based on my knowledge of history, that voting for either of them will result in the same outcome. So that was option number two. Option number three is what the UIC represents. We're giving the Jamaican people a chance to say, let us do what we should have always done. Let us recognize that those two parties are the product of our colonial masters. The plantocracy, which is the land owning class that simply used those two parties to trick us, and they have kept us tricked for the last 80 years, allowing us to vote between the two of them, not realizing that both of them are funded, owned, and controlled by the same plantocracy, or today we call them the PSOJ, and I add on the word oligarchy because not every member of the PSOJ is a part, but the big rich elite group that funds these parties to the tune of over $300 million for just a few weeks of the last election. So watch me
Right.
now. If you don't vote for the two of them, and if you don't decide to do the foolish thing of not voting, meaning you don't vote, you're automatically ceding your rights to those who do vote. So if you do not vote, you are by extension still getting the same outcome as if you vote. So the UIC now gives you a third option. Vote for the UIC, even though we can only promise you that we're going to do well. We are not able to do the work for which you have already paid the government. All of us have paid the government to give us good roads. We have paid them to give us good policing. We have paid them to give us good education. We have paid them to give us good health care. Now, the fact that they haven't done it doesn't mean that you should now ask a party without your tax dollars to now come and do for you what you've already paid the government to do. So vote for us based on our policies, based on our ideologies, based on our promises, and you're giving yourself a 50-50 chance of something better. You have a near 100% chance of getting the same thing if you vote for them, because the probability of them failing is high given their past performance. The UIC has never held government before. So voting for us is giving yourself a 50-50 chance of something better than continuing to vote for certainty, the failure that they have given you for 8 years. If the man beat you for 5 years, you have a track record. If he beat you for 10 years, you're insane if you continue to stay with him rather than switch to another man and give yourself a fighting chance.
Makes sense. You know, you mentioned three things earlier: fear, the things that cripple the people in terms of making a decision, and let's say no, for better, for that 50-50%, for that 50% chance. Let's put it
Yeah,
that way. You mentioned fear, ignorance, and that economic stifling.
yes.
Now, you also stated that one of the may I use the word initiatives, or one of the strategies employed, let me use that phrase, by the UIC is to have persons invest, as it were, in their own thing. Something similar you mentioned to what Marcus Garvey sought to achieve through
Yes.
his political party, and that I'm going to ask straightforward. Is that a mechanism to correct the economic strangulation? Do you think that
Okay.
in its
So I get the question. So one of the things that the power brokers have done, and you might have seen this recently, the way government is structured today, right? It is to strangle the small man into a role where he has only one option in life, and that is to go and beg a job. So when they freed the slaves in 1838, that was a fake freedom, which the slaves at the time didn't understand, and even today, many people don't get it.
right?
And forgive me for backtracking because it leads to the point I'm going to make. In 1838, when the Queen of England says, slavery is now abolished, free the slaves, and the slaves are free and they're clapping. And by the way, they worshipped her. They were clapping her. They were saying, what a lovely woman, not realizing that she's a part of the game. And even to this day, you could see that we're still brainwashed, because when those guys came here the other day, when the Prime Minister bring them to shore up his support to get our minds off the fact that he's such an evil person based on his actions, we had our children pushing their hands through wires to touch these white skins as gods and angels coming down from heaven almost. And they used the same thing on us in 1838 and today. Now, in 1838, when they freed the slaves, they withheld two things from the freed slaves. Number one, they withheld back wages, if you will. They had stolen the people's labor for 400 years. So all that wealth that would have been generated over 400 years was stolen from these people, but not given back to them when they freed them. Fine. On top of that, they did not give them back the land that was stolen from them. So these persons were now free to do what? To beg a job. Okay?
Free to
I
beg.
put this to you. It is the very same thing they're doing today. They're tightening the noose to make sure that if you want to start an investment project, you have to go to them and get their permission. And they have laws and regulations which are designed to make sure if you're not playing the game the way they want to play it to benefit them, they shut down your program.
Right.
So in 1838, they did that. Now, after 106 years, in 1944, remember now we're free from 1838, it took 106 years before they gave us the right to vote. They call that self-governance, okay? Universal adult suffrage. But I want to point out something to you, Mr. Jackson. Why did they give us the right to vote 106 years later from when we so-called get freed, which we were never freed then, right? Because if you did free, you shouldn't be able to vote. But what they said, only persons with property could vote, which means they rigged the free system. You're free now, but they rigged it. So only if you have property, but the slaves had no property. So now you're free, but you cannot vote. You cannot participate in the governance of your country, even though you're free. So that was a strategy. Now, what I'm pointing out to you, I want you to be able to see all the future strategies come down to now. So watch me. So in 1944, when they gave us the right to vote, that was on the premise that they realized with the pressure build up, the pressure cooker build up, and we're going to bus. Bussing means things like burning down places and chopping up people. That's what bussing meant back then, okay? So they don't want us to bus. So they then give a little something now. What did they do before they give us though? They organized two political parties and give us two whitish looking men, because they know that our mental degradation was such that if they gave us two black looking men, we're going to reject it because they already programmed our mind. So they gave us two whitish looking men, one that is educated in London, in the UK, even fought in their war on their behalf, and is well decorated, and come back and say, this is what a Jamaican is, a man who fight for the motherland, who fight for the crown. See, good man, bright man, the man with the plan, Norman Manley. And then they give us another one now, just in case we not too sure, somebody who is more street oriented, street smart, can speak the ghetto language and stuff, but still above us is a money lender and everything. So Bustamante, that's the man. So they give us a dichotomy to give us the feeling of choice. We feel like we have a choice now. Well, we don't have the choice, because behind the scene, they still have the puppet string on both of them. You understand me? And so after testing out that system for 18 years, from 1944 to 62, they say, them ready now. Them ready. What are they ready for? We're ready now to stop seeing the colonial master as the problem and start seeing each other as the problem. So little bit now we start throw a stone after each other. Go ahead, you dirty laborite, you. Go ahead, you this comrade. And we start throw a stone. Then we take up machete. And by the 70s now, 60s going into 70s, now that we ready for the fake independence. And why did we get independence? Again, the pressure cooker built up a little bit. And it went bust again. So before the pressure cooker bust, what you do? You give them a little bit of changes again to say, no, you have independence. And we'll clap again. And watch the videos. Watch the tapes. We were in glee, welcoming our colonizer to come and sit in our parliament to give us the instrument of independence, to give us the book that we're going to live our life by. The very people who stole our lives, stole our wealth, murdered and raped our people. We welcomed them. We organized our people. We let them inspect our army, walk off our airport in red carpet. And we say, whoa, these are beautiful people. So again, the mind is still there. And so we gladly accepted who? A white woman from England as our head of what? State. And then our leaders pay allegiance to her to take the oath of office, to say it's her that we're representing and all that she represents. And what does she represent? Slavery. Okay, so we did that now in 1962. So what happened? We have now shifted from fighting the crown, from fighting colonialism, from fighting slavery to fighting each other. For what now? Now they teach us how to be corrupt now. We're going to fight each other for our turn at the trough. So when you put me in, I'm feel me time now, and we teeth from you. And you put this one, I'm feel me time now. So all the time, you're not developing now. You're not enriching the mind and enriching the soul. You're not making our people brilliant and wise and aware and more knowledgeable and technically competent. You're just playing the game with them now, where they fight for their turn in office. And if you're a party getting in, you're going to get little something. If you're a party getting in, you're going to get, but not enough. Not what you really need, which is empowerment, which is knowledge, which is wisdom, which is skills. And you're not getting that. You're getting a little zinc, a little block, a little goat food, and David Crawford want to give you a free goat and those kind of things. That's how they want to keep the people. And it has worked. Now, come to today. Where is it now? When they finish with us, with the new constitution they're going to bring in, we're going to find ourselves on a digital currency where the government will have the power to turn it on and off at will. So if you're not doing what they want, if you don't take the next joke they bring for you, if you don't do the next activity they command of you, that is slavery. And now they're going to have the power of technology to fully re-enslave the nation. And Marcus Garvey warned us. He said, any leadership that leads you to depend upon another race is a leadership that will lead you straight back into slavery. And Marcus Garvey was right. And if we don't stop them now, you're looking at another 400 years or 500 years or 1,000 years in slavery before we get ourselves back out of this.
You bring us to another point. We've gone over the hour. We're an hour and 18 minutes, and the time seems to be flying so fast. So we're looking at the ignorance part and the correction of that.
Which is what we're doing now. We're trying to do it.
Is there a program in place that the UIC has right now?
This is it. Every night I go on a live, I'm trying to educate and empower our people within the UIC. When you become a UIC member, you become a teacher, you become a filter, you become a disseminator. Every uniter is here to unite the rest of Jamaica. When we speak here, a uniter listen, a uniter learn, and you go out and you find somebody and you say, come, let us unite. Take off the green shirt. Take off the orange shirt. Take off the green mindset. Take off the colonial mindset and let us unite as one Jamaica because we're stronger together.
And I guess that in itself is inspiring courage where there is fear.
Absolutely.
Those are the 3 points I wanted to cap off with you, Mr. Patterson, the thing of ignorance, fear, and the thing of economic strangulation.
Yes.
There's another piece of or another part of it I wanted to get into, but this may have to be for another time when we can sit in again. Reparations. Now, when I speak of reparations, this is not about just receiving from the colonial masters money. That's not what I'm speaking of. Just now you spoke to the internal fighting that we now have as a result of what was dished to us. So we are not fighting against so much the colonial powers, but each other.
Yes.
And so that reparation is needed.
Absolutely.
Right. And many times people think of reparation as just, getting back money from the crown or the monarchies or whatever. But most people don't understand that reparation is more of a spiritual thing where here has to be repaired for the change to really begin. Because even if you give, we've seen over the years the handouts, and does not make changes. And that's the very reason why I asked just now about the program of educating the masses.
Well, let me tell you a little bit about that. If tomorrow England, Europe should give us 10, 20, 30 billion dollars in reparation, we'd be just as poor after they give it to us as we are now.
That I agree with.
Yeah, because we would not, first of all, our politicians would do with the $25 billion what they've done with the $2 trillion. Okay?
That is so.
They would have found a way to steal it. And even if they put the money in our hands, put some money in our hands, most of us would waste that money because we're not very intelligent in the way we should be. Which is why the UIC has an education program. Our education program, we call it LEAP, the Learning Enrichment Advanced Program, LEAP Forward. And what LEAP is based on is the reparation or repairing of the mind, as you're speaking of. Now, what LEAP does, when we form the government and change the education system, it will first of all become an Afrocentric system. And by the way, don't get me wrong, I have no hard feelings against persons of other races, white, yellow, red, doesn't matter to me. All of us are one. We're all created equal. But of course, based on our circumstances, we become unequal in many ways. So I'm now trying to repair the damage done to the black man, the damage done to the African. And so LEAP takes us from a Eurocentric education system to an Afrocentric education system. And what do I mean by that? We're now going to teach the true history of the African. And by true history, I mean all of it, not the one that begins with slavery and not the one that makes you dependent because of slavery. Okay?
Right.
We don't want you to feel inferior or to start making excuses. So I'll give you a taste of it. We will not teach African history in a way that says these Europeans come and they did all these bad things to us and they're horrible, evil people and they're wicked and whatever that. We're going to teach it this way. We failed to defend our freedom, and here's why. We failed to be prepared. We failed to fight effectively. We failed to be a united force to repel the invaders when they came. And the question is, what must we do now to make sure the invaders don't successfully invade us again? Okay, so that's one part. So the LEAD program now goes to the person. We're going to have a holistic education system. So
Right.
every student must learn three core things. Three things. They must understand themselves: mind, body, and personality or character. Who am I? How do I manage this massive amount of asset and wealth that has been given to me free of charge? How do I fully accelerate this mental capacity, this great mass of ability, which so few chooses to do much with? In Jamaica, when I drive around the country, walk around, I see so much wasted lives, so many wasted minds, because we have not been taught what a powerful machine we have up here. So the mind, and then the body. How do you manage this constitution so that it fully affects and helps this mind to produce at the highest level of competencies and proficiencies? And then, of course, what kind of character should I have? What kind of man or woman do I want to be? What does that mean? What is a good character? And we'll show them how your character is your greatest credit worth, your greatest blessing, right? If you have a good character, I'm getting a feedback here. If you have a good character, then you have the best possible credit score there is in the world. So that's one. The second piece is, apart from understanding yourself, it's the understanding your fellow human beings, human
Right.
relations, understanding people. When you understand people, you can build great personal relationships, romantic relationships, family relationships, business relationships, transatlantic, global relationships, because you understand human behavior. So I want to teach your people to build and maintain strong relationships so you can resolve conflicts better. You can live more harmoniously. You can cooperate with one another, because one of the secrets of economic success is when you can build teams. Because when you have teams, you have persons who have different specialities on the team. When
Right.
when I was at UTech, and forgive me for taking up so much time, but when I was at UTech as an engineering student, I created a group called the Associate Investors Group. What I did was to pick students from all of the disciplines, from architecture, engineering, finance, dietetics, teacher education, and bring computer science and bring them together. And I taught them how to analyze and pick stocks on the then emerging stock markets. Would you believe it? Through that system, we helped many who could not afford it to pay their tuition, because we figured out how to pick stocks. Why did I bring so many different groups together? Because I tell them every company has different facets. If you're going to analyze a company that's in the pharmaceutical industry, having a pharmacist on the team to help you understand certain pieces, in
Right.
addition to a finance person, in addition to a marketing person, in addition to an architect, whatever, we're able to better analyze those companies and make effective stock picks. Those skills have followed me for years and have benefited me greatly, that even when we have collapses in the oil market, my stocks and portfolio balances out the cost in my personal life. That's a side way. But the point I'm making is, we need to teach that second skill. Yourself first, then understanding others so you can build strong relationships. The third skill, there are three. The third one you need to learn is money. How money works, the science of money, the history of money, the architecture of monetary systems, so that you can see how they have been tricking you over the years. The monetary system we have, that we have lived with for the last 50 years, since Bretton Woods in 1944-45, that system that we have lived with, right? That system, not 45, Bretton Woods, they kind of changed afterwards. That system has cost us a tremendous amount of purchasing power. If you look at Jamaica's statistics, over the last, say, 30 years, our inflation rate has been more than 800%.
That is
What
so.
does that mean? It means that you, Jerome Jackson, if you were to save 10% of your income every year for 25 years from the time you started working, and said, okay, that money is going to be there to help for my pension, you'd have made a solid mistake, because that the value of that money would have been stolen, not because you made any mistakes, not because you did the wrong thing in saving, but because the system is designed to punish you for saving. It's designed to make it hard for you to get ahead. It's designed for you to be poor when you retire. Now, the UIC, our policy will change that. We're going to replace fiat or fake currency with real money. We're going to introduce free banking instead of what you call it now, cartel banking. Right now we have cartel banking where you have a global cartel with miniature cartels in every country that dominates the banking system, creates a monopoly for them so that they give you a minuscule percentage, call it zero, on your savings while they make billions on it and allow you to have to seek out very risky arrangements to try to make something to compensate for inflation, which most of us will never be able to do. You have to be specialized, very trained to be able to do that, or you get lucky sometimes and so on. So all of these things, Mr. Jackson, are what we think about when we build our education model for Jamaica. So the LEAP program takes those 3 core subjects. Today, the core subjects are math and English and so on. That's a waste of time. The 3 core subjects I just talked about, mastering self, mastering people, mastering money. Then now you can now have the other supporting subjects, math, English, physics, chemistry, and so on.
I appreciate the view, Mr. Patterson. I have one last question, and briefly, because this is I have questioned myself and I've presented it to some other persons, and the views have been varied. Now, as it relates to national security, what you just articulated sounds like for national security. Would you agree with me on that?
Absolutely. As a matter of fact, the whole thing is national security. The whole thing is personal security and national security. If you educate your people, there's no great nation without an educated people. You
Agreed.
cannot be, if you become great by conquest and leave your people ignorant, you will quickly diminish. If you want to take a third world country and make it into first world, you have to invest everything you have in your human capital. Lee Kuan Yew understood that. Let me tell you about Lee Kuan Yew, and I've copied much of what he has done in his country, and I've made it better by focusing on protecting our sovereignty. But Lee Kuan Yew did 4 things in Singapore that we must not forget. The first thing Lee Kuan Yew did when he took office was to make it very clear that corruption was never going to be accepted, 0 tolerance. And so what he did was to have a top-down approach to eliminating corruption. We in Jamaica have a bottom-up approach. So we focus on the small man that does something wrong and punish him greatly. Lee Kuan Yew, Singapore, did it the reverse way. They focus on the big man who does something wrong and punish him greatly. So if a politician fall out of line when it comes down to corruption, the hammer must come down heavy upon him. So when his peers and the people see that, they say, oh my gosh, if that big man there can be punished so severely for even slightly getting involved in corruption, well, little me not gonna do it. And so that's how Lee Kuan Yew set the tone by top-down approach to both corruption and crime. Start at the top. If you cut off the head of anything, the body dead. If you cut off the head of the corruption monster, the body of corruption can't filter through the rest of the public and private sector. So the UIC is going to focus on, for example, every politician, every one of them, once you are elected, I remember before we check you out, so we know what your net worth is. And if your net worth move and cannot be explained by a clear connection between your income and your investment of that income, and you can't show that connection, then even if we can't prove anything else, you have just disqualified yourself and will be punished accordingly by the confiscation of all of that wealth. You understand me? So we're
Right.
going to eliminate. So that's what Lee Kuan Yew did. He eliminated corruption from the top down. So right now, Singapore is one of the lowest corruption index in the world for years running. Now, the second thing he did was to insist on public safety at all costs. So their police, for example, were trained to look for crime before they happen.
Mm-hmm.
So their police officers go after, so they ride bicycles or bikes most of the time. They don't drive so many cars. They're on bikes. Why? So that they can move quickly and nimbly in and out. So their police officers are roaming the streets constantly, looking for possible crimes, and then stopping it. So the people now get used to that environment where corruption is bad. So the people develop a culture of anti-corruption, while Jamaica develop a culture of pro-corruption. In the crime now, the people see the police as their friends because the Singapore use a community-based model like the one the UIC proposed, and get really involved in hunting down possible crimes before they happen. So the people get used to that, and so they become pro-anti-crime. So your culture, what Lee Kuan Yew did was now create a culture, which we can do too. So after he did corruption and crime, then he went after clean. So he insists on a clean Singapore. Everywhere must clean. The waterfront, they took 2 years and cleaned out all the muck and dirt and stuff out of it and made it pretty and clean so the fish come back and the birds came back and the people can come and sit there and enjoy. The streets, clean, punishment. If you drop anything on it, even chewing gum, you can't drop that. They might hunt you down. They put cameras in place to monitor, are you messing up the place? We're going to catch you. So clean, beautiful, well-maintained gardens along your path going to work. So you feel nice. When you come out to your house, you feel good about yourself. You feel motivated. You feel like you live somewhere where they care about you. In Jamaica, it's dirty. You feel when you go through out the door, the pressure of the low wage is on your mind, and then the place just dirty on top of it. You understand? And it just haggard and everything just disorderly. No, the man said, listen, efficiency, customer service in the public service, clean streets, well-maintained, manicured lawns and flowers. If them can do it, why can't we? So again, corruption gone, safety is there, clean is there, and then public order. So when you hear the UIC talk about it, we mean it. Safe, clean, orderly, and cut off the head of corruption. If you do that, you now create the environment for maximum productivity, maximum production, and now you're raising the income level and you're raising the standard of living for everybody. The fourth element of Lee Kuan Yew, apart from really the fifth element. So corruption, safe, clean, orderly. The fourth element was now education. He insisted that the teachers who teach your babies at basic school must have a master's degree in the area that they're going to teach in. What does that mean? In Jamaica, we damage our students from basic school. We beat them up, we shout at them, we yell at them, and we have duns teaching them. You follow me? At basic school. So you'll have a teacher teaching your child who don't understand maths, but you'll kill him with lick for master him timetable. She can't teach him how to master his timetable. There are ways, there are ways you can make it easier for a child to understand how to memorize the times table by first teaching him what is this math all about. So in Singapore, they teach you math by playing. So first you play with the different shapes and you play with the different ideas and theories, and your mind and your body get used to just touching those ideas, touching those things. So when now the teacher now try to create the abstract out of that, the mind is in tune with the language, with the feeling, with the for example, volume. In Jamaica, we tell you about volume and we talk about it. In Singapore, they show you what is volume versus area. So they show you physically take the thing and you fill it up and say volume, surface area, cut out the can and spread it out and say area, surface area. So the mathematical principles become a part of your practical living.
Yes,
That brought those students to a level where our best math student today is Singapore's worst math student in that country. That's what the UIC is about. We're going to make Jamaica no less and very likely much better than Singapore.
we thank you. I thank you. I thank you, and I thank the UIC for the opportunity for us to do this. You know, I have other questions.
Yes, so next
Much
time we're
more
going to
to
look forward
say.
to. Well, let me thank
But
you.
I really am grateful. I'm grateful for the opportunity to have sat and well, we spoke at length. Um,
Baba Blue says, "Give us 30 minutes more of this reasoning." Let's take
yeah,
some questions now. Let's allow people to call in. We'll give you 20 minutes to call in. What do you
definitely,
think of that, Mr. Jackson? We can do that.
definitely, certainly,
So
certainly.
let me put on the number on the screen. So anybody who wants to call in and just share your thoughts, it doesn't have to be a question. You might just want to tell us what you think of what the UIC is proposing, and or you want to ask a question for clarity on anything that you have heard us say so far. So that's the number on the screen, 2930812, area code 876. You can call in. But while we're waiting, um, Mr. Jackson, do you want to tell us, based on what you have heard from the UIC, what are your thoughts? What are your feelings? How does it resonate with you?
So the sound of a Garveyite movement is always an encouraging sound. It is quite interesting. I move around and I don't gather from especially the young people,
Mhm,
that energy that was resident in our foreparents as it relates to revolution.
mhm,
Not saying that it's not there, because there is yet still a few who have uttered their their um, their disgust at the system,
mhm.
and so we do have those who would love and would appreciate this sound that the UIC is making.
Mhm.
You understand? But as
Yes.
I said before, it's going to take more. Let me be very straightforward, Mr. Patterson and UIC members. It's going to take more than just UIC Liberty TV.
Well, of course,
I
but
know,
for that,
I know, I know.
it's going to take
No,
more
let
than
me
UIC
finish.
Liberty TV,
Uh,
for sure. But it begins. It begins. You see, if we don't have this conversation, people don't know what it is they're fighting for, right?
mm,
As it is now, without the UIC, before the UIC, the Jamaican people were completely lost. People know that they don't like what they have, but they don't know what to have. They don't know what to do, where to go. The UIC has given us what to do and where to go. The UIC has opened up a door, and the only question is whether or not we're going to go through that door. Some prefer to sit on the sideline and wait and watch. I have started this movement since 2012. 2012. If you go on the UIC's Facebook page, you'll see the date. I think is January 12, 2012, I believe, when I created that page and just put it up there. And all of that time I've spent deliberately hammering out each and every one of the ideals that you see us proposing here, working
right.
through them. I have brought many people together, and as usually normally you have the infighting that happens, or you have the persons who think that if we don't agree on every single thing, we can't work together.
Mm,
So if you don't, so a person come. I remember in the early days, 2013, some people joined me. I didn't know that they were pro-gay, so they joined, and then they found out that I'm not going to be advocating for their ideals. I'm going to be advocating for sovereignty, and you can deal with your own issues. And so they end up leaving us. Let me take this call. Um, Hello, good night. Welcome to UIC Liberty TV. Who am I speaking with?
You're speaking with Mike, Mr. Patterson.
Mike. Welcome, Mike. Where are you calling from?
Connecticut.
Connecticut. Excellent. Go ahead and share your thoughts or your question.
Good night, Mr. Jackson.
Good night to you, Mike. How are you doing?
I'm pretty good, sir. Now,
Awesome.
I have to laugh, Mr. Patterson, because, of all this time I've been listening, and you always talk about mind, body, and soul. How you want to teach us like that. When you started talking about the volume and the areas, and you started talking about how that's where you want the basic schools to start teaching kids how to get in tune with the different things, I was like, oh my God, that is exactly what the mind and body to teach about these things. You know what I'm saying?
Yes.
And look at that. It had to. You brought it down to the infant school level for me to understand it. I'm like, see, that is just to show you how, as old as I am, I never understood. I thought I knew, but you brought it down to the basic level.
Yes.
You know what I'm saying?
Yeah, man.
And that is why that's why I love the UIC.
Wow.
You know
Thank
what I'm
you.
saying? That's what I mean. That's not just why, but that is one of the reasons why I truly love the UIC. It teaches you, it empowers you.
Thank you, Mike.
Listeners, we have to donate. Okay, we have to donate. This is what needed for the country. Okay, this is what's needed, and let's do it. Thank you guys for the time.
Thank you so much, Mike. Appreciate it. Thank you.
That's awesome. That's awesome. Let me just follow on to that. It's in national security. I deliberately asked about the national security part, Mr. Patterson, because we have been cultured to think of national security as men in boots and guns in hand.
Absolutely. Yes.
Defending the state. And I don't want to get too much into that because we're going to have a conversation about who is the state, who is the people.
Yes.
Things can a state exist without people? All of these things, right? But that's another conversation. So when we speak of national security and the current template have us to understand national security being the state basically infringing on the rights of the people, because if Jerome, for example, speaks a particular way right now on air, and is found to have infringed on the state, irrespective of his inalienable right to freedom of speech.
Yes.
If I say certain things, Mr. Patterson, I can be locked up, I can be accosted, and all sorts of things can happen. Right? So, and the charge would be from the state would be the one now saying that Jerome, I have, right? So there are questions as relates to this. So we speak of national security, and just know that why I asked you, all right, why I asked you to confirm for me if it is that your vision of national security was articulated in your last set of statements as relates to the four pillars that you basically spoke of just now. And when you said, yes, this is your vision of national security, I'm like, here goes someone who has a different understanding, as a true understanding of what national security is. So
absolutely.
I appreciate
I want to just piggyback on that idea of national security a little more. There are, again, three things that the UIC is keen on to further augment our national security. It's called water, food, and energy security. But let me take this call first.
Go ahead.
Good night, Mr. Ventus Brown, and welcome to the program. How are you doing, sir?
No, Mr. Brown.
Hold on, we're not hearing him at all. Mr. Brown, can you hear us?
I certainly can. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you now. Welcome again.
Okay, well, I'm calling from London, so you can imagine it's pretty early in London.
Yeah.
But I can say it's been a very good, well-balanced program. And my question to Mr. Jackson is, what's your take on the media's failure to broadcast
information concerning the UIC and the fact that there is a third party, and do you see this as an element of fear on the part of the Jamaican media not to give a proper coverage to the UIC? And then secondly, do you consider the government's failure to call local elections as somehow being tied to the potential rise of the UIC in Jamaica?
All right. Appreciate the questions, my friend. So the first question as relates to the media, bearing in mind, truth be told, media, as I was having a conversation earlier with Mr. Patterson, I was saying that bear in mind, media is an industry, it's business. And the owners of these businesses have their interests to consider, first of all. Let's understand that. And it is a truth that as a result of this, media may be mindful, right? In as much as it's a platform for outputting information so all can be educated, media also is an industry that is controlled, yes? And the fact is that persons must be mindful as to what it is that is output based on the fact that they are doing business. That's the truth, that's a fact. Right? So not everything that not every information can be in Jamaica. There's a saying that said, and everything good for talk. So not every information per se the average media output for you know, for the masses to ingest or to have access to. Right? So yes, there may very well be and I'm saying may because, as I said to Mr. Patterson just, I must be also mindful of how I go about. I can't say definitively that yes, the mainstream media is deliberately, but I can say for the record that the mainstream media is business being done, and so business interests have to take in consideration the whole thing of prolonging business. Without any form of restrictions or sanctions or any other malignment that could take place subject to. Bear in mind, as a journalist, there's a motto that it says that we are the merchants of facts. Now, facts and truth, as is established, is not necessarily the same thing. But the media personality, the mainstream media personality, is about delivering to you the facts, whatever that may be. Now, of course,
clearly, Mr. Jackson, the media in Jamaica is doing exactly what you said, but it's more than just business, in my opinion. It's when you have the same people who fund the two major parties also owning the media most of the media, the traditional media spaces, then you are not going to have free and fair and balanced reporting. If that was not the case, if we had some independent media houses that were truly independent, that means they're neither biased by their partisan favorites or biased by their income based or their ownership control, but truly independent, they would want to carry news about a potential competitor to the traditional political parties. They would want to carry that. They would want to show that because it would add value to the content that they're sharing. Just imagine, for example, TVJ were tonight take out a few clips of what I'm saying here and play that on their program and say, here's this interesting fellow that is saying these things. It doesn't necessarily represent the views of TVJ. We're just sharing with you what this political party is talking about. And they're saying this kind of thing. I am sure that their view of it, I'll give you an example. In 2016, during the 2016 election in February, I was invited to All Angles with D.N. Jackson Miller, together with persons from the Marcus Garvey PPP group and the NDM, And when I started to speak on the program, it was the early days of social media. Their Facebook page that was carrying the thing live lit up. And people were just, who is this guy? What is this? And the excitement. And then I was just cut off quickly. And never again given another. I was on the stage with all of them. And then they shifted to the other speakers and kept the conversation to the others. I didn't know at the time. My people were busy watching the stuff and then they showed me, because they had to take pictures, because I think they then deleted some stuff or whatever. They had and showed me, said, look what was happening. The thing was lighting up. Now, they are afraid that if they were to give this kind of communication, this kind of information, for that to come out of mainstream media, for the average Jamaican to hear, our people might become very excited, very engaged again in the political process, but not to vote for them. Because right now they're disengaged because politics as usual is not enticing to the Jamaican people anymore. So they're pulling away. So if you know where to give them a little taste of the UIC's agenda, let them hear the UIC manifesto, let them hear the plans we have for the people. They know that the moment they do that, the next time they run a poll and say, who would you support in the next election, you'll see a flip and you'll see the PNP and GLP somewhere near the bottom. And the people say, this new party, not because they know everything, but when they hear the message, it would resonate with 9 out of 10 Jamaicans, and it would be game over for these two parties. So they have to try their best to suppress this information, not because of a business decision, but because they are a part of a system designed to collude to keep the Jamaican people right where them halfway. They don't want us to come out of this, because the moment we come out of this, they now have true economic competition. It's a free market. Jamaica doesn't have a free market. The moment the UIC become government, you now have a free market, and those who are able to live just because of their connection with government will find that that situation changes. And those who are not connected and now can truly compete and say, listen, see my product, see my skill, they will rise. And those who have been kept mentally and competent-wise weak because of connection and favoritism will find that they're on a different side of the table. So they can't afford for a Joseph Patterson or a UIC to become government.
Well, we have an upcoming election, Mr. Patterson. And again, it is suggestive that based on the numbers, the Jamaican people are at a place where we could put our fingers and in the ink and do something differently. We could.
Of course. And for that we have to, because elections, are not won by message only. Elections are won by machinery. And I'm not in any third parties coming in and make grand announcement. I'm going to be very real with you. There's no way for the UIC to win the next election or any election unless the Jamaican people, home and abroad, funded the party for us to have an election machinery on the ground. The Jamaican people are not mature yet to just hear a little bit and then go out and vote for a third party. Remember what's going to happen. The hardcore labor rights and hardcore comrades are going to go out and vote for their party because they're brainwashed to the max. Then you have a few now who are kind of on the fence, but they haven't yet become intellectually mature. So they'll still go out. If they don't see anything on the media saying UIC, whatever, they'll say, okay, them can't win. So they'll go and vote. Okay? And then the vast majority will stay home. So if we're going to get the vote, we have to have the money to go and connect with the people in the nook and cranny. And on election day, be able to physically have our 2 indoor agents, our 2 outdoor agents, our guys to help with transportation, and our coordinators. We have to have a ground game. So this So we have to fund this. Joseph Patterson can't fund this by himself. I've already spent $15 million of my money. It has cost me $15 million. As simple as you say it, from I started in 2012 until now, the personal cost to me is $15 million. Personal cost. In 2021 alone, I lost by one particular area, $4 million. Gone, just like that. So this is a real fight, a real battle. Now, I am fortunate enough to be able to still stand here before you today after all of that cost. It could have cost me my marriage. It could have cost me my children. But I am doing this because I believe it is time. And if we wait any longer, we're closing a door that may never open again. So we have to act now, and we have to act fast. Everybody have to become Marcus Garvey now. We have to, if we don't have no money, give your time, give your energy. And all the way, Musk can find 250 Jamaican dollars a week to say, may I put on this for the UIC. And if you're overseas, you must can find $2.50 US dollars equivalency to say, I'm going to donate this to the UIC. $10 a month, $1,000 a month in Jamaica, $250, whatever. We all have to pitch in, friends, if we want this. And remember, when the UIC is elected, when our system going, it's not Joseph Patterson you're going to make wealthy. You're making Jamaica wealthy. You're creating a system that allows every Jamaican to achieve their full potential. And that's what we need. And that's what we must have. And we have to pay the price to get it. Nothing is free except salvation.
Sounds like a revolution.
It is. So thanks again, Mr. Jackson, for your time.
Sounds like a revolution indeed.
It is.
All right.
It's a grassroots revolution. It is we the people. There's no magic bullet. Friends, there is no big benefactor behind me. There's no big company. There's no big donor. There's no big rich sponsor. It's me and you. It's we the people.
That is it.
Revolution. Yes.
That is it. I just want to encourage the ones who've watched this live that we've done to leave your comments, continue to leave your comments in the
Oops. Is it me that's frozen or it's Mr. Jackson? I'm not sure. One of us is frozen. I don't know if it's me. Is it me that's frozen? Let me know if I'm frozen. Am I frozen? Or is it Mr. Jackson? Somebody's frozen. I don't know who. Can you guys hear me? Am I still live? Let me know. Because I'm not hearing Mr. Jackson at all. Can you guys hear me? Okay, all right. So it's Mr. Jackson that's frozen. Well, he has done himself well. He has asked us some wonderful questions, and I hope you have gotten the answers that you need. I'm going to leave you now because it's 2 hours in, and these lives are too long. We have to shorten them a bit, but we're working on it. So thank you all for being here. Do me a favor, and when the live close out tonight, please go on and give a comment. Tell me how we did, what you liked, what you didn't like, and give us your suggestions and recommendations on anything. We welcome all feedback because it's through feedback that we learn. I think Mr. Jackson is back. I'll let him say his goodbye, and then we can close.
Thank you for that. I was just encouraging the viewers also to just continue to doing that and saying that the conversation does continue. Education is the thing. Ignorance is never bliss. And so let us continue to educate the people, UIC, and we await an intelligent response at the next polls from the people, a more informed response from the people at the next polls.
And remember, we're looking for candidates. So anybody out there who wants to be a candidate, you just need to be a Jamaican and resident in the country for at least 12 months prior to the election, just in case you're a returning resident. You must be somebody that is able to effectively communicate and truly represent others. You have the skills and competencies to do so, and we welcome you as a candidate. Once you are from the community or work in the community or have ties in the community, you can represent that community, whether it's a constituency or a division at the local level. Please recommend yourself or recommend others you know to become a candidate. We'd like to have all 63 for the constituencies and all 228 for the divisions. We're far from that still. We have some good candidates, but we need more. And if we have more than one candidate in a division, that's not a problem. We will make sure that we put you through a process, and your community will decide which of you they think is the best candidate to represent them at the next election. So thanks again. Have a good night, and remember, one Jamaica, we're stronger together. Take care and good night. Thanks again, Mr. Jackson. All the best.
All the best.